Hello and welcome to the Works podcast. My name is Samuel Ashkenazy, and today we are joined by our guest, Mena Guy. Mena, like me, is a director, writer, producer, and all-around sicko who I have had the pleasure of working with on more than a couple projects. Her YouTube channel is Church of Mena and has an awesome library of horror shorts ready to frighten you to your very core. With nearly a dozen titles under her belt and over 150,000 views, I am honored to call her my friend and my colleague. Mena, welcome to the Works podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Sam.
Thank you for being here. So, we've worked together a couple times, but, you're a very fascinating person to me.
I'm glad.
And I wanted to actually, get to know you a little bit first, too, and, also the world.
Okay.
What was, your first exposure to horror? What started bringing you towards horror?
What started bringing me towards horror? I don't really know. You'd think that I would have an answer to this question. I think when I was younger, I read a lot. I read a lot of Stephen King books, Goosebumps, when I was a baby.
Yeah.
And then I just started diving into, I guess, different horror movies from there. I mean, Goosebumps had a TV show when I segued from, books to film. And then obviously, kind of snuck in The Exorcist when I wasn't supposed to.
Of course.
Like everybody else. And, but, diving into horror, I, quickly realized, there's many different fascinating subgenres of it. And it's a very complex genre where I feel, it can dabble in with a lot of other genres. There's horror with romance. A lot of it's just drama-based, but I think that I have an appreciation for each of the subgenres, and that kind of piqued my interest. I've always liked fantasy. I've read a lot of fantasy books. I liked The Lord of the Rings. And you know what the thing is? I don't have a Lord of the Rings budget. But, what's really
Fair.
interesting is you can do a lot of the same things that fantasy has with horror, but on a lower scale. So just starting out in film, even in college, or even taking it back in high school when you wanted to, just dabble and, test the waters, you can have an SFX artist or a friend, just make some monster. And you can tap into these fantasy elements like paranormal, whatever else. And then it makes sense in your story. And I really don't see a lot of other genres being able to do that and selling the movie. Make a romance movie and then there's this crazy mud monster. It's not going to happen. But
Yeah.
so I feel horror is such a genre where you can really express that creativity. Although for me as a writer, I find myself writing a lot of psychological horror movies. Sure. Because I love the complexities of the human mind.
Sure.
And I guess that's another thing is I really liked a lot of true crime growing up.
Sure.
And so seeing that humans are monsters was a big thing for me, and that reflects in a lot of my writings.
What was your favorite true crime story?
Oh gosh, I don't want to sound like a sicko, but there's a lot of it's weird because I don't want to phrase this in a way where it seems like I'm romanticizing anything, because I'm
of course
not.
No.
And I know that there's a lot of people out there who have done that, and that's very wrong. But I feel that there's just, I don't think that there's one case that really was the most interesting to me, but just little facets of each case of why that would happen to someone. And I guess the snowball effect of seeing someone's childhood, to see how it affects them later on to make that decision, even though I would wish that never happens. But just to see the effects of someone's mind through trauma and through their environment. Because there's a common question is someone's personality, are you born with it? Mm-hmm. Or has your environment shaped you to be like that?
Of course.
And honestly, I think it's a mixture of both. And just seeing how, it's an action and a reaction, and then the product of how this is shaped. How is a serial killer made? What made this person do such a horrible crime? And I feel kind of that effect is also in different ways of movies. Okay, here's a monster. Why is it acting like this? What created that? And for writing, I feel that really affected me in the way of visualizing the iceberg. Not everybody has to see what A, B, C, D was to make E happen. Why did you can create this entire backstory, but if you know it and you understand how your characters work, and just I guess making them deeper and bigger, it helps as a writer, I feel. So I've taken pieces from like true crime, and that's affected even just like a paranormal story for me.
How do you feel about drawing inspiration from like your own life experiences? Do you add a lot of those into your writing, or do you try to keep a healthy separation between the two?
So that's a really interesting question. I feel I do have naturally a healthy inspiration, but like, um, obviously, I think that life experiences affect everyone in a certain degree. I definitely take inspiration from personal relationships that I've seen or things that I've, witnessed just through life to, and put that into my writing. I think personally, I like to write a lot about like the Asian American experience and put that into my works in different ways, or just like that of like minorities and how people see things differently. I take a lot of inspiration from Jordan Peele. I think he's really
Oh yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Okay, Jordan Peele fan.
You can do anything with this genre.
Yes,
Like he puts a lot of social meanings into his work,
absolutely.
and I don't necessarily do that myself as a writer
Yeah.
as much, but the fact that it's like you can take horror and make a message with it. And I mean, like, I feel that has, it's always been done. Like, look at folklore, and
Yeah.
stuff, and you're telling messages, and like but it's I feel like with the birth of like films from like Jordan Peele and like even Ari Aster and stuff like that, it's like there's this different type of horror that has been that has kind of emerged in the
Yeah.
recent years.
I think
It's just different.
I started noticing, I think, when the Babadook came out.
Yeah, I agree.
It's
I
like the
agree.
Babadook was like this moment where I think it was suddenly a deeper look at this haunted house idea. And I saw ever since then, it's like there's been this real effort to try and like make the genre more mature. I
Yes.
think for a couple years there, it like really fell into this. Uh, I don't want to say like slash and gash fest, but
Yeah.
like a little bit. And I think there's a lot of gems in the slash and gash,
Hmm.
but then it also gets a bit repetitive. And I think
Absolutely.
I like how the horror has really kind of become one of the few genres now that I think people could really take risks in.
Yes. Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
I digress. You were not always in New York.
Me.
Yes.
Yes.
So
I'm a
like
Florida man.
you're a Florida man. Yes, explains the crazy. So like, what was the journey up here? Like, how'd you find yourself in New York?
Well, first off, I feel like I've always saw myself in New York. Most of my family's here,
Okay.
but also I think just the media opportunities. I wanted to go to school in New York, and one thing I really love about here is the diversity of people.
Sure.
Like, if I go to New York City, I could go to a Turkish restaurant, a Jamaican restaurant, food. But I mean,
Sure.
there's everything on every other corner, and I feel like just people coming from all over the place. That's inspirational in itself. I feel I am exposed to so much, so many different people's journeys or cultures and stuff like that. Like, I could meet someone who is just traveling in for business from Australia, and I wouldn't have gotten that experience as much being in Florida because although it's touristy, it's just very slow paced. Not everyone is as ambitious, and I can't say that for the entirety of Florida because obviously there's some like really amazing creators and business people there, but it's just the energy is different in New York, and
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, New York's the city that never sleeps.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I always envisioned myself here, and when I did come here, I immediately fell in love with it.
Yeah.
I felt like, especially for artists, everyone's an artist here. I could throw a rock outside the window and hit like 10 musicians on the head. But the fact that like everybody is constantly trying to make a project, constantly talking about creations and like collaborating and doing things, I find that to be beautiful. Like, no matter where someone lies within the art realm, like I've collaborated with a cellist and this guy who is a professional harp player and he traveled the world, and then someone else who just paints. And I feel like there's always this kind of like creative energy and this medium where we can merge our talents. Like my friend, she does painting, and my other friend, he's a composer. So they did a show together where she would show off her paintings, and he made music for each piece of like how he felt the painting felt,
That's
and
cool.
it was really cool to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these kind of multi-talented multimedia shows where that was just really interesting, where it's like, I it kind of reminds me of this one rock band. They did a rock show, and there were people tattooing at the show, and I'm like, I don't know if I would personally get a tattoo there, but yeah, I would.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like you wouldn't think that really chaotic rock show that you'd see a tattoo artist
Sure.
focusing and doing tattoos there. But the fact that like you've got different versions of art, together, I think that's such a fascinating thing.
Yeah.
And that really like kind of brings me back to horror.
Yeah.
I guess I always found an interest in like the dark side of human nature, like I said, but look at Midsommar.
Yeah.
You've got beautiful flowery imagery, and all of the stills, they look like art pieces, but it's mixed with gore. Like, it doesn't even have to be someone's favorite movie, but like seeing the guy and the bear, surrounded by flower crowns, that's a weird image to me.
Sure.
Like what is that? And you imagine horror and scares and even folklore or thrillers nighttime. Like, I'm afraid of when the lights go out, and stuff like that, but now the daytime's scary. Anything could be scary. Anything could be weird. And that's why I also think that, like, true crime is fascinating, because monsters, these people, they're walking around everywhere.
It's broad daylight. Yeah.
I want to be clear that people with mental illness, they're not monsters. It's just,
Of course not.
just saying that. But it's, when people want to harm others and it gets dark, just making that clear. Is like my first short film out of college. It was this one called Monster, and it was about this little boy having nightmares,
which you could find on Mena's YouTube channel, Church of Mena.
Yes.
There's the look. There's the look.
But so this film, it was about a boy having night terrors, and he would envision this zombie-like monster, really skeletal, with a big cyclops red eye, or I'd say beady actually, but it was really apparent to him, and it would follow him around. This was right after his parents divorced and they moved into a new house. And I'll spoil it. It's on YouTube. You guys can watch it, whatever. But
watch it right now. Go watch it right now.
Go watch it right now. It's 10
Pause
minutes.
and then come back.
It's 10 minutes long. But so later in the film, we kind of find out that the monster was actually a pedophile, homeless man living in the walls of this guy's house. And a child's trauma, especially at night, it was making his vision see the red dot of a recording camera as his eye, and this man's like skeletal arms, because he's, just so he hasn't been eating and stuff like that.
That's a kind of interesting idea.
It mixes it.
Yeah.
So it's also showing to me, like, what I wanted to show off with that film is that it is a monster, but it's so much more, it's scarier than actually the skeletal monster with like a dot. It's this pedophile, and he's been attacking and recording the boy, and we see that he's been wetting his bed. He's scared to go in the basement because the monster whispers to him, and the mom finds out later, like, oh, like, because she's been brushing off his nightmares, saying like, it's just in your dreams. It's in your dreams. You'll be okay. But then she realizes, oh, wow, my reality is even worse. And now this is a monster to me, and my son has been being attacked. What am I going to do? But that's kind of like I love those psychological twists, and especially playing with like reality.
Yeah.
I love to do that in films.
Oh, yeah. One thing that I wanted to touch on that you kind of brought up was this idea of like your protagonist not necessarily being a truthful narrator.
Yes.
I think that's a really interesting thing to play with when you're writing. How much do you do that in your writing? How much do you mislead the viewer because necessarily the protagonist doesn't have all the information? Like how much do you like pulling the rug out from people?
I love doing that. I love doing that because I feel like, one of the biggest differences obviously in film versus like a novel is when you're reading a book, you could see what the character is thinking, and I feel like you can step into their shoes a little more. And yes, books can still do that effect, but I feel like because we are showing you only what we want to show you with cameras, you have so much more to play with.
Yeah.
So a movie that I take inspiration from that does that a lot is Shutter Island.
Great film.
Love
One
that
of my
film.
favorites.
Watched
Yeah.
it like 5 times.
Yeah.
But it's really fascinating because also at the end of the film, the viewer can still
Wait,
question.
hold on. Just
Yes.
1 second. Now, audience, if you have not seen Shutter Island, there might be a spoiler here. And let me tell you, when I really wanted to see this movie when it first came out, somebody spoiled the ending for me. And I was really young and I cried.
You cried?
I cried. So please don't end up crying right now. Skip ahead a little bit. I'll give you like a little thumbnail or something after we spoil this. Go.
I'm really sorry if I make you cry. But I guess trying not to spoil as much. The ending.
It's okay. We warned them.
We were. The ending is fascinating because the viewer can still question, was he crazy or not?
Yeah.
You know, even though it's like there's a lot of clues which can say like, oh, he's a patient, or you know, whatever else. People can still. It's still kind of foggy, and I found that to be very fascinating.
I find what's interesting in that last moment of that movie
Mhm.
is when he, his final line, I believe, is, would you rather live to see yourself become a villain or die a hero or something like that?
Yeah.
You know, because in his head, he would have died as Teddy Daniels, the detective who saved the day and exposed the lies. But in the reality was he was Teddy Daniels, the detective who failed and couldn't save his kids.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like this really kind of shocking line just with the dialogue alone. You know, there's, you know, it's kind of this argument for less is more, I think, in that moment of like not
Exactly.
actually letting the viewer definitively know, but
Yes.
like in the back of his head, he kind of just
He
alludes
knows.
to it, you
Yeah.
know, and it's such a powerful moment. When you look at the field of horror right now, where do you hope to end up? Who do you hope to be like working with at some point?
Okay, I think to answer this question, I would say, where do I see myself? Or I guess my goal would be to create psychological horror films, but also have kind of like a touch of the early 2000s or even 80s, you know,
Ooh.
horror. Yeah,
Okay.
because I love a good slasher.
Okay.
But so I don't want to tie myself down to a subgenre.
Sure.
Yes. So, like, I see myself making something like the Babadook.
Now, do you
or a
always see yourself
monster.
doing horror?
I think naturally I'm a horror thriller writer. It's the easiest, but I would love to do a fantasy piece. And I've challenged myself to do romances or family films, and you know, I don't mind doing those, and I would still love if it comes to me, I'll write. You know, whatever I feel passionate about in the moment, I'd just like to produce. And if I have the freedom to do that, you know, then that's amazing. You know, maybe I'll make a Christmas Hanukkah film one day. But I think just naturally, even when I'm just like riding the bus, looking out the window,
So
unfortunately, I guess, a horror story comes to me. I don't know how great that is.
I mean, looking at the world just passing by could be enough
Yeah,
inspiration.
I'm a generally like happy person too, so
Yeah.
it's funny. Like,
Oh no,
I guess-
you're fun to be around. That's for sure.
I find a lot of inspiration also from like some older horror films. Like I don't remember what year this came out, but there was this German film I believe called The Cremator,
Okay.
and it was like it had comedic elements into it, but it was about this guy, and it was black and white. But what they did was like they had really interesting experimental camera angles, and I feel looking at films like that, you know, also I'm like, I would like to take elements of that and put that in my ratings. And I feel that film particularly, I would recommend people to watch. Again, if you don't want spoilers, don't listen to me, pause it. But he basically was a cremator, and he felt cremating the bodies, he was acting kind of like a messenger of God and helping send them up. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating, you know. So he looked at his family, and he's like, oh, all of you guys are, taking part of Earth's sins. I'm going to cremate you and send you to God and purify you. And I was like, wow, that's horrific. So it's basically this chase in the movie.
Viewer discretion advised.
Viewer discretion. He's chasing his family members around, trying to knock them out one by one and purify them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, it's weird and horrendous because he's doing it out of love, but he's going after his family. And like again, it's an older movie, but like I still think about that constantly, and the way that they shot it. That one and this French movie, Les Yeux Sans Visage.
Okay.
Eyes Without a Face. It is
I know
so
that. Yes.
good. I love it.
Yes.
And for the time, the face removal scene. Sorry. It's on Google Images. It's just on Google Images. I highly recommend people watching that. It was a whole roller coaster of emotions for me. It was also lots of family elements in there, but the effects for the time, like face removal, and it seemed very Nazi experimental.
Sure.
It was just really wild. But like seeing movies like that, I feel also a lot of today's movies, like some of them, because it's horror, you can go to extreme lengths and do certain things, like
sure.
Even Midsommar with the guy and the bear, or the beautiful man falling off the cliff, whatever it is. But
I mean, I've even seen horror movies. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen Martyrs.
Oh.
I mean, if we're talking like,
Martyrs.
if we're talking like extreme movies,
yeah.
or even like any of, if I pronounce his name wrong, I apologize, but I think that Gaspar Noé, like even all, or no, even all of his films are like super shocking.
Yes.
Von Trier gets super shocking these days.
Yes.
So I think there is like this.
It's a lot of Japanese horror.
Oh yeah, that's another one too.
There was this one where there was 3 different countries of Asian directors called Three Extremes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you heard about it. I recommend that to you. My favorite was this one called Dumplings.
Okay.
And basically, this woman, she knows her husband was like cheating, I believe, if I remember correctly. He was like cheating on her or something, and she felt like she wasn't getting as much attention because she was older. So she goes to get some youth, revitalization stuff, and this woman gives her dumplings. So she eats them, looks younger, gets more sexually active with her husband and stuff like that. Everything's good.
Ooh.
And then spicy. but we find out later that the woman was giving these horrible dumplings from fetuses from an abortion clinic and feeding them to her. And because her and her husband's relationship has been getting better, she got pregnant and she wanted to keep up her youth. So what did she do? Ate it.
I have a question for you. So, like, touching on the extreme end of things.
Yeah.
Right? Do you think that you could go too extreme?
Yes.
Because I would, going back like to Martyrs for a second, I do really like that movie. I think there's a lot of commentary in it that I think is really interesting. I think it leaves you in a kind of like really despondent place. It's a very off-putting but effective movie.
I agree.
But I do think that there's substance to it. And then like going to like the end of like a Serbian film, which I don't know if you know of that.
Oh, I know about it.
But I mean like that's like, notoriously listed up there in like one of the most disturbing movies ever. And at one point, like I was going through this kick with my friends where we were trying to watch like the whole list
of
all
worst
the
movies you could
right,
find.
Guinea Pig from Japan and Antichrist and Salo, and all
all
of them,
I didn't even watch that one, but I read about it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to watch that.
I've heard enough.
But I mean, when it gets to a point though where I do think that it does push beyond a limit of like redeemability. Like I don't think I could like ever in good conscience recommend like a Serbian film to anyone. I could absolutely recommend Martyrs, but like I do think like there's this point where it's like we also like do have to exercise this certain level of like we have to have a reason to tell this story too.
I agree.
I think it can't just be like for shock.
I think the difference is exactly what you said, and it's substance.
Yeah.
Because I can make torture porn.
Yeah.
But what is that going to do besides just having gore? Where's the story? And I feel like, is this earned? Is my biggest, I feel, point. Is the gore earned? Is everything justified? Does this make sense in your story? Because if you're just putting shock to shock, I feel you're losing the story, and you're losing me. Like
Yeah.
it's escaping, and now it's just here's mindless gore and torture. And again, I'm a slasher fan. I love seeing some really nasty stuff sometimes,
Yeah.
but because I can really appreciate the SFX and all that. But it's like, again, does this make sense? Even like Eli Roth's Green Inferno, right?
Yeah.
Cannibal film.
Sure.
It's fun, but the thing is, it's you'll see some comedic elements. You've got a story. I'd recommend it to people.
Yeah.
I went to go see his 10-year anniversary of it in
That's cool.
yeah, in the MoMA. They played it. It was really fun.
In the MoMA?
Yeah, he did a speech. And they had a whole Eli Roth exhibit. It was ridiculous. I was like,
cool.
all right, let's go see some fine art. But yeah.
Nothing says fine art like cannibalism.
It was funny because I took this one of my brother's friends with us, and my brother didn't tell him anything about it. He's like, oh, my sister, she's a filmmaker. Come watch this movie with us. There's a showing. And he's like, oh, cool. And I think my brother, I don't know how he did it, but he led him to think that we were going to go see a rom-com. And he's like, oh, Owen Wilson's in it, right? My brother's like, yeah, Owen Wilson. He sits next to me midway into the movie. He just looks at me and he's like, Owen Wilson's not in this, is he? But, the thing is, it's like still a fun movie to watch. There's a story.
Yeah.
There's things going on. It's not just like, okay, we start at people going to an island and they get cannibalized. It's like there's more of a journey. You see in that movie the girl and her arc from the front to the end, and see how it affected her and how she changed. Martyrs, that it's the same thing. You see how people are changed and affected. You see the way of the world's there and why things are happening. I feel it's justified, even though what they're doing is kind of gnarly. Even dumplings that I said, earlier, the subject matter is pretty vile and gnarly, but the story, it's rounded. It makes sense. It comes together in the end. And I think that is, for me, the biggest thing about, torture or films that are quote-unquote extreme. Like, I feel even a Serbian film, it starts out kind of like that, but I'm like, it loses me with some of the story. Like, I'm like, I feel not everything has to be like that, has to be that extreme.
Yeah. I think, what threw me off with Serbian film was, like, it actually appears to be a well-done film.
Yeah.
When you first start watching it,
Yeah.
and you're like, wow, like, this... So somebody funded this like a lot. Like, this must have something to it.
Good. Yeah.
And like by the end of it, like I just remember like feeling so worn out and like just upset. And I'm like, I don't ever want an audience member to feel like that leaving a movie. Like, even if it's scary, like I still want them to have fun with it.
Yes.
I don't like I borderline on like super disturbing things also I think don't have a ton of rewatchability.
Yes.
Although there's also the argument that like you can't look away from something grotesque, but like I
still feel with that, like, yeah, maybe you can't look away from something grotesque. It's captivating because it's shocking. But I think another point of like a shocking film that I would say is I Spit on Your Grave.
Sure.
Right. It's got subject matter that I'm not going to talk too much about because people might have sensitivities,
Yeah. Also, YouTube might demonetize us. Sorry.
But yeah. So that film has a lot of really intense subject matter and triggers.
There was a lot in that era. You had Last House on the Left, I Spit on Your Grave.
Yeah.
You
but
had
the
a kind of.
Is, with those, you see violence.
Yeah.
You see torture. You see, all this stuff. And people get ripped apart. But the thing is, I would still recommend that to people because, obviously if they can handle it, but because it still tells someone's journey, it's rounded. There's still a story there, and the quality is not bad.
For me also, but when I think of like I Spit on Your Grave though, or even Last House on the Left, or any of those movies, I feel like the characters though, even though they get like horrifically kind of brutalized, for the most part they get their revenge.
They do. It's a revenge film.
But like when I sit there and like you look at something like a Serbian film, those characters are at such a disposition that they could never get revenge. They're just simply there to be tortured, and it's like it's not for our amusement. Like we're not having fun with it as the audience member, and it's like it's not like Saw.
Oh yeah.
When I go to Saw, it's almost like a comedy. It's like I love going there and just like having a ball with it. I can't,
Jigsaw is one of my favorite icons.
I seriously, and like I cringe saying it, but I can't wait to see Saw X. Like I can't wait. But like,
how did you like the most recent Saw?
I wanted more from it, honestly. Like both the newest ones, Jigsaw and Saw Spiral. Spiral, I really liked a lot more than Jigsaw.
Like Spiral, yeah.
But all like the newer installments, though, I feel like they've played it a little safe. Like
Yes.
I feel like when you look at like 1 through 6, like it was just balls to the wall. Like it's just they're throwing every ridiculous contraption and machine that they could find at these people, and like again, like it's silly, like it's silly, but like I kind of also know what I'm walking into when I'm going to see a Saw movie, and they're not taking themselves that seriously.
But also, I feel regardless if they're taking themselves seriously or not, the gore is earned.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the methods of the villain, even if like you could say like, why is he like this? They should catch him. I don't this is terrible.
Well, he's a righteous killer.
He's a righteous killer. The thing is he justifies it with his actions. He tries his best to like be like, okay, I'm doing this for a reason. So you see the killer's reason, like even if like you'd have to disagree with it, and he's torturing people. He's in his mind, he thinks he's a savior.
Well, what I think is cool about Saw is it turns the audience into like a sadist, and also like, the characters in Saw have to earn their lives to the audience.
Yeah.
Right? Because they've all done something bad for the most part until like, until the plot gets a little muddy. But I mean, like for the most part, all those characters are corrupt. They've done something awful, and they have to now earn their life back because, Saw has made the judgment that they don't want to live anymore with their decisions.
So, like with that being a really gory type of a movie, I still feel everything is earned and justified, and so I could recommend that to people.
Oh yeah.
But like things that are just mindlessly torture, like you start watching it, I'm like, what is even the story here? If I feel like I'm losing the story,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't even remember why this film, why these actions are happening, and this is just people getting cut up, and even if the SFX are good, I'm like it doesn't seem right. It just seems like I'm just watching this like brutal, killing, and here's a bunch of SFX. It doesn't feel earned. It doesn't feel entertaining to me at that point.
When you're doing your own work,
Mm-hmm.
do you ever feel pressure to be shocking? To try and just break through into the zeitgeist and try to make something that's shocking enough but still retains its substance?
Funny. I don't think I actually feel pressured to do that. But maybe I'd put it on myself in different aspects, because sometimes when I'm writing or even going into the process, if I don't have a story yet or characters, I'll write down a list of scares, or themes. So like for Monster, I was like, the scare that I started out with was someone living in your house that you don't realize, and then from there, I kind of developed something from that. So I don't necessarily think that like the outside world affects me so much to be like, all right, let me go shock the viewers. But when I'm figuring out where my story is, sometimes I'm like, okay, what is the scare that I'm going to have here? What am I going to start out with? What's the horror? And then my story develops from that. So.
Yeah. One of the shorts that I really like from you, which features one of our passion fruit family, Lee Simmons, is Roasted.
Oh, I love that one.
And Roasted, for the most part, it's all implied.
Yes.
There's a lot of implication in that, and the dialogue is great banter between the two of them.
Thank you.
What I also really like about Roasted, though, is you took a risk on it, and it's all in black and white.
Oh, yeah.
How did you find that viewers responded to that? Because, I feel like there's a huge hesitation from viewers these days to watch anything black and white. It's like they immediately like shut it down. They're like, this is boring. And it's like they don't even give it a shot. How do you feel that your audience responded to it?
I think before I even answer that, I think going into it, I didn't even think about that. I said to myself, like, I don't really care. This is something that I want to do. And so I think first and foremost, I always think of myself when I'm writing. Do I like what I'm doing? Is this entertaining to me? do I like? I haven't done a black and white piece before that, and we did shoot it color, and so we did black and white over that. But I think it added to the aesthetic of the film. But I think also because I had fantastic like camera and lighting team for that, it made the black and white images beautiful. They did a great job on it, and I think some of the stills, just because they were beautiful pictures alone, got viewers to me. So I feel like it wasn't even ever a question of is black and white okay, because the visuals were very stunning. And I feel when I put that out, it honestly, I think it got people's attention more so because it was black and white, because they're like, what is Mena doing? Like, this is her first black and white piece. Like, what is this? It looks so old-fashioned. Like, I am curious to see what she's doing, because this is not
So people responded
style.
to the risk.
Yeah, they responded to it in a very positive way.
Cool.
But I think that that film also, it was interesting to me because I'm a very action-based writer. I like to do very minimal dialogue, more action, more like, okay, the twitch of this person's eye just told his intentions. And I feel like, especially with with everything, like body language is so key. Even if you're writing a romance, it's like, okay, how is this person nervous? Are they like squiggling in their seat? And like, are they biting their lip? You know, it's like you could tell so much about what someone's thinking just through action. Yeah. So I've always felt myself doing that more. I watched a lot of silent films. But with Roasted specifically, it was actually a challenge for my friend, who is more of a dialogue-based writer, and he was watching my films one day, and he was telling me, like, Mena, you know, you always do action stuff, you know. I'm going to challenge you to make a compelling and scary horror film with just two people sitting at a table. And so that's kind of where it started. So I was like, okay, two people sitting at a table, and it's horrific. What am I going to do with it? You know, what is the worst conversation you can hear at a dinner table? and there's my film. That one's going to get me demonetized, so I'm not even going to talk about it. But I'll say Little Bits is like, I threw in every horror thing that I could think of. But
if you haven't seen it, go check it out on Church of Mena.
Yeah. That one actually, I think it's got like one of my highest like views on YouTube. But,
I believe it's 64,000.
Yeah, maybe something like that. It was very cool. But like, it was interesting, the responses I got from some people. They're like, why would you do this? I guess as a horror filmmaker, like seeing that, it just brings a smile to me. It brings like little pieces of joy to my life. I'm like, yeah, why would I do this? Why would I ruin your day? But yeah, it's like everything that you don't want to hear at a dinner table, it's got that. But the thing is, it still keeps people at their seat and makes people, I guess, upset. You know, with each layer of dialogue that comes through, like each sentence is something worse, you know. So like towards the end of the film, it's like, wow, I thought this guy was a piece of shit. No, she's a piece of shit. What are they doing? So
peeling back the onion.
Yeah. And I think also that film particularly, I didn't want to have a protagonist.
Yeah.
So if you look at both of my characters, even if the conversation flipped, the wife is not a protagonist.
Yeah.
The husband's not a protagonist. No one's good. They're both horrible people. And so they're just horrible people having a conversation. So one thing that, and I was happy that I got this response, but people watching it, they're like, I don't feel bad for either of them. I just feel bad for the daughter. But, yeah, like both of them are just horrendous people, you know? But, I guess that also is interesting because of like, we'll bring it back to like Jigsaw, right? Someone who justifies their actions and thinks that they're doing the right thing. That's what I kind of wanted the wife in that story to do. Mm-hmm. Like, she feels like she was being selfish, but she was feeling like she was being right to herself. Like, this is okay, you wronged me, you know. And but she's in the end, they're both villains. So that was a fun project.
And sometimes that's the most fun to write when you're writing for people that are both in the gray areas or definitely in the wrong. But you know,
whatever it is.
Those are like sometimes the most fun people to write because you oftentimes taking sides while you're writing with people that you know you shouldn't be.
Yes.
Which
Naturally, I think the viewer does that. It's like you want to like the main character. You want to do that. But whenever the main character is the villain, I feel like it makes you angry, and it's like, I want to like you, but I can't.
Do you ever see Hard Candy?
Yes.
With Elliot Page and
yes,
Patrick
with Elliot
Wilson.
Page, yes.
That was another one where it's like you're sitting there the entire time and you're constantly like, who am I rooting for right now? Because at first, she takes advantage of him, and then you realize that he's been the one taking advantage, and then it's, it keeps flipping back and forth between each character. And it's, I love those type of rides because I often find they're also the most unpredictable.
We're going to have to make something like that.
It's coming.
It's coming. Beware.
So, yeah, beware. So, jumping over to the more production end of things.
Sure.
Outside of just your work being great, you are an incredibly resourceful person.
Try to be.
You get stuff done. I give you a lot of credit.
You have to be as like an indie filmmaker.
So describe how you learned all that skills of becoming the producer that you are.
Okay.
Because I've learned a ton from you in the short time that I've known you.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
And I hope hopefully we could continue working and learning from each other as we go.
Just the start.
But you seemingly have picked up skills that are just extremely difficult and very nuanced and niche, and I want to know how did you get there?
Okay, so I think as a filmmaker, my journey started with editing. I knew that just romanticizing film and seeing this as a kid, I of course wanted to be a writer director, just make my own movies. But how can you do that? Films cost so much money, and I know everyone's argument is, well, you've got an iPhone, go shoot with your friends. Yeah, I can do that, but you want to make a piece that really looks good, and how can you do that?
Yeah.
So
just to interject really quick, those the shoot it on an iPhone argument, which of course Steven Soderbergh did, but generally those cameras are emulating what a real film camera does and not necessarily doing what a real camera does, and they are restricted.
Yes.
Once you actually start using it and you need to affect the lighting and the lenses, and you quickly run out of options when you're filming with an iPhone or filming with a Samsung, whatever. So I do hate when people try to minimize the work like that.
Right. No, exactly.
Because it's so much more than that. It's so much more of a science than that.
Mm-hmm.
Continue.
But even with that argument, you're going to need someone, let's say someone was shooting with an iPhone, you need someone to operate that phone.
Mm-hmm.
You need someone to be your DP, and so you can direct, and then you need an actor. And even if it was just this minimal crew and you've got some friends, what are you going to do? You got to feed them. You got to do, you got to take care of your crew. Mm-hmm. You got to find a location. There are still so many... Schedule things. There's so many different elements of filmmaking that really help, is needed to create the final project. So for me, when I was, I guess, thinking about how can I do this, I started my journey, aside from writing, with editing. So I continue to write, obviously, all the time, and I'll just store my scripts to the side for when I can produce that. But understanding how to edit helped me so much because I can really manipulate my own project and create it from the truest to how I want, and from that I told myself, it's gonna be expensive to get a director of photography, and also as a director I feel like I'm gonna have to communicate to them well to let them understand my vision and how I want, so we can have this good collaboration. So I got into camera work. So I would do even just small commercials for local businesses, edit it myself, make a music video, edit it myself. And then I would try to do some student films, get a couple students together. Yeah, I'll buy you guys some lunch. I direct it, or I'd practice shooting it. I just tried different aspects of it, but I'd always come back and edit my films because I know that if I can especially shoot and edit a project, I can get my film done. I don't have to rely on as many people. Like, so for example, if I just wanted to make a story and I wrote something down and I was like, Sam, I wrote this for you. You're going to be my actor. It's going to be this man walking around his apartment. I can produce that all by myself. I can get the apartment. I can have you walk around. I can shoot it. I can edit it. I can make my film. From there, now it's like, okay, getting the other people involved. But with that, even so, it's like I went on to productions and I started as a PA on set. And then I would ask, like, gaffers, like, can I grip for you so I can understand lighting a bit more? I am still working in camera today, and I ask cinematographers, people have so much more experience than me, can I be your AC? I'll do it for a lower rate. Just get me on set so I can understand these things. And even if I don't fully grasp something completely, like, I will not do sound work on a set. Like, I know I'm gonna mess it up. That's just it's fine. I'll get someone to do sound. But as for the visuals, because I feel like that's very, very important. Not saying that sound isn't, but but as for the visuals, if I can understand how to manipulate lighting and camera, I can get my story out there a bit more. So having these people hire me on so I can understand different aspects of production really helped me with my directing, and it also helped me with my storytelling. So I would just ask for that. And when I was doing indie films and I first started out and I'm fresh out of college and I'm broke, how I would also help people how I would get people onto my sets and create my projects. I would offer trade for work, because that would be me honing on those skills more, learning more about camera and lighting and stuff. Like, hey, I'll work as a grip for you if you come on and light my project, and whatever else, I'll rub your back, you rub mine. And so my skills in those other facets of film were growing, and it was strengthening my directing and writing. And so when it comes back to my projects, I realized I have a network now. I can call these people, and now I can pay them. But it's all of that kind of circulated back to me directing and producing my own stuff. But networking, if you're a new filmmaker, that's the biggest thing that I would really recommend you to do is network with people, specifically in crew. Go get on sets. The one thing you can really do, even as a writer, just get on set. See how other directors work. I love seeing how my friends direct their projects, see how they talk to their actors. Hell, even act. If you as a director put yourself in an actor's shoes and you see someone directing you, what works, what doesn't? I took a couple acting classes here and there, and I'm not an actor. Maybe I'll make a couple cameos for fun, but that's it. But it helps me understand, like, okay, I really need to tell people to twitch their eyebrow, move their face, move this arm, because that's going to help tell the story. And it also then affects my writing. So I guess all of that was my journey. And I'm still doing that today. I'm still trying to get on set. Even if I am a PA on someone's set, just being on set as much as I can and soaking it all in.
So going to sets of today,
yes.
Work is starting to slow down a little bit right now due to the strikes. How are you feeling about the future of the industry right now? You're good. Do I need to re-ask that?
Yeah.
Okay. So production is slowing down a little bit right now. How do you feel about the future of the industry and where it's heading right now?
I think that we are going to come back, and hopefully from the strikes, everyone is going to listen, and people will get their pay and benefits. And, that's at least what I can hope for. I think that, film is always going to be there, even if people are trying to turn to things like AI. We need these people's stories. We need these creators. Also for, like, as it's kind of horrible because I stand with everyone in the strike, but for indie filmmakers,
this is the time.
Put your projects out there.
Yep.
Go right now. Write, produce, get something out, because there is a lack of content.
Yep.
Make your films happen. But I think that people are always going to create, and I think that hopefully we will go into, a new version of the industry where it is more beneficial for everyone.
I would hope so,
Yeah.
and if, last weekend's box office was any indication of that, I think we're in the right track, you
Absolutely.
know. And right now, like, the summer has a lot to offer. I mean, there's been a lot in the theaters right now.
Definitely.
Not just like between Barbie and Oppenheimer, but I mean, Joyride, Past Lives, you have Talk to
One
Me,
with the hand
Cobwebs,
is touching.
I mean, there's so much playing right now.
And I think also, with what you said earlier, with there's new types of horror,
Yeah.
and even with other genres in film, I feel this is showing people be a little more experimental, and people like that.
Because, like, for me, horror is really what's always spoken to me. Like, even from like a kid, like, I remember the first really memorable theater experience I had was leaving Cloverfield.
Oh wow! Yes,
You
yes,
know,
yes, yes.
I left Cloverfield with my dad, and I remember like a big 18-wheeler drove past, and I like screamed in the parking lot. And like, ever since that moment, though, horror found this way into my heart where it was like, um, in my worst moments, I felt like there was empathy in these movies.
Yes.
And it was a weird cathartic kind of viewing experience for me, in a sense that, like, um, I could channel some of my own trauma through these,
Yeah.
and find a lot of relief in them.
Well, I also will add that I feel horror compared to a lot of other genres. I think maybe despite sci-fi and yeah, specifically sci-fi, some fantasy, is it's got a huge cult following.
Yeah.
Like I people don't go to romance cons,
No.
we go to horror cons.
Yep.
There's it's got like great cosplay. There's like it's like a cult, people love it. And it's like a community. It's got a great community. Like and horror movies throughout the ages will still be recognized and loved and talked about, passed on to another generation.
Sure.
So I feel I'm not opposed to a jump scare as I'm not opposed to gore if it's earned, if it makes sense in my story. Like Roasted, no jump scares.
Right.
Monster, zero jump scares because there was no reason for me to put them in.
Yeah.
I didn't have a placement for a jump scare, but if I'm writing a story and maybe a kid is going through like, I don't know, this haunted house, yeah, it makes sense to have a jump scare there, and you'll increase the music score and I'll do it. But I would feel personally like I'm cheating my audience if I just do it to have it.
Yeah.
It has to make sense in your story, and I feel that goes back to the writing. Is this a scary moment? Does this matter for the pop up? Or should it just be unnerving? I feel like it's a stylistic choice.
Yeah.
If anyone is a budding filmmaker or a horror filmmaker, I highly encourage you to just make projects. And hell, even if you are, you just have an iPhone, it's good to make things happen. And
Start.
It's a start. And the thing is, take that start, and every time that you make another film, add more to it. So now you're using a phone. Next time, adjust your lighting. Try doing it with a DSLR even. Get a cool music score. Keep adding to your film. Keep going on sets. Just keep practicing. And if you're a writer, keep writing. That's the only way that you're going to be better, is just practicing your skills.
All right. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes episode 2 of the Works podcast. For more updates, check back on ScareWorks.net and get our newsletter by subscribing down below. And
look forward to the future. Me and Sam might have a project together.
This has been a ScareWorks production. I'm your host, Samuel Ashkenazy. This is Mena Guy, and this was recorded at Audio Workstations in Bohemia. See you at the movies.